when I was 7, I remember so vividly driving up Palm Drive and looking at the Quad and Memorial Church. And I said to my parents then, this is the most beautiful place I have ever seen. And I'm going to go to Stanford too.
I remember we were in a Packard with the top down. This was 1932. He said, now boys, we're going down Palm Drive, and then he'd tell us stories about it, and you could smell the eucalyptus and the tar weed. These fellows, they were just simply, they just couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their exposure to colleges back in the East had no semblance to this sort of thing.
It was 72 degrees, and it was 12 below zero in Nebraska. And by the time I got to the intersection of Palm Drive and Arboretum, I turned to my mother and I said, I'd like to go here.
I have a strong impression of driving up Palm Drive, no stripes or curbs, or it's just a narrow paved road, and with the church ahead. That's just an image that's stuck.
We were met at the Palo Alto train station by some enthusiastic upperclassmen who got us out Palm Drive and deposited us at Encina Hall. I'll tell you, the drive up on Palm Drive was awesome.
And then when the Lark stopped in Palo Alto, there we are met by the band, the Dollies, an enormous welcoming committee. It could not have been a nicer introduction. And I still remember being gobsmacked as we come up Palm Drive and you see the famous view with the church and the hills, and I'm going, oh my gosh, it's as beautiful as it was on the postcard.
If you walk down Palm Drive, if you would start walking down Palm Drive, there was the tradition that someone would always stop to pick you up and take you the rest of the way downtown or coming back opposite. Met some nice people that way.
So we saw a couple of girls on the right-hand side walking along. We went around the block, picked them up. We took them where they were going, called them up another day or so later. We dated a few months and were pinned shortly thereafter and have been married almost 50 years.
Of course, a favorite in those days was Palm Drive, which was a cesspool of pits and holes, and you could break an axle on that.
After a summer of learning about how they drained state highways, I came to Stanford and saw Palm Drive. If you know what Palm Drive looked like. It seemed like Stanford's approach to storm drainage was pray for sunshine.
But when it rains and it rains heavy, you only have one lane on each side because the sides would just flood. And so you narrow down from 4 to 2 lanes because you want to stay out of the water and stuff. So it's a real mess. And a lot of the streets were in pretty bad shape.
When I first got to Stanford, Palm Drive was an embarrassment. You could barely drive down the street when it rained hard because there were so many indentations in the asphalt, no curbing at all. The water would sometimes run off the streets. It was ponding around the palm trees, which of course, if water sits around palm trees for very long, it kills them. I mean, the sidewalks were terrible. I met with Gerhardt at least once a month for the whole time he was president. And sometimes he would take even an hour or 2 hours of his time to go over campus planning and architectural things. That was how interested he was. But I said, this Palm Drive is just an embarrassment. And so he and I went out one day and we walked, not the whole length, but part of it. And he said, you're right. He said, we've got to fix this. What should we do? And I said, I think we should go back to Olmsted's original design. The granite curbs were a part of the original design. The road was crowned so that then it drained towards the curbs, and it was supposed to be as straight as an arrow. At that time, it would have been a carriage road. We had an image of what that would be. So when we did Palm Drive, there was some pushback because people said, why do we need granite curbs? If you go out there, you'll see there's slot drains, and there's a continuous drain that slopes to where there's going to be a catch basin, but it's underground. So that when the date seeds would fall, they would go through rather than plugging the drain. It's Olmsted, it's Palm Drive, it's Stanford. Got to do it right.
I still remember driving down Palm Drive and seeing the large Welcome to Stanford sign and having a pinch me moment of, wow, this has been my dream since I was a child, and the day is finally here.